Ersten ist war Mainz 05, zweite Liga.
Also Kantinenmannschaft ZDF, Mainz 05.
People laughing uproariously would hardly believe that years later, this little-known young player would become a widely acclaimed people's coach after his retirement. When Klopp first picked up the coaching whip in Mainz, the German worked wonders. He commanded the least budget, played in the smallest arena, and executed offensively driven football that impressed the world. And his stellar performance garnered him the opportunity to coach Dortmund. When the moment of departure came, tens of thousands of Mainz citizens flocked the streets, singing songs of solidarity, and watching this spirited blonde head coach say goodbye to his inception with tears. Yet, this wasn't the only time Klopp drew the attention of an entire city. Flash forward to 2015. Klopp, armed with two Bundesliga titles and a German Cup, bid farewell to Dortmund, and a familiar scene played out. 75,000 Dortmund fans shed tears at Signal Iduna Park. At this moment, people realized that today's Klopp was more than a jester in a variety show. In October of the same year, Klopp assumed the mantle of Liverpool. Upon his inauguration, the German plainly stated, "If Mourinho is the special honor, then I, Klopp, shall be the normal one." While the British media showered Klopp with humorous praises, Liverpool's captain, Henderson, felt out of breath. Since joining the Reds in his first season, Henderson was frequently subjected to skepticism from his coach, and patience from the fans was thin. Fortunately, like the city of Liverpool, Henderson never capitulated in the face of adversity. Just when Henderson intended to introduce himself to Klopp in the same spirit, the German head coach's attitude was extraordinarily calm. In Klopp's view, Henderson was a good player, but he was constrained by pressure. Donning Gerrard's captain's armband, he remained constantly vigilant on the pitch. He was a captain, but more importantly a player. Only by letting go of his apprehensions and earning respect through on-field performance could Henderson do what was needed. Klopp, known as the people's teacher, decided to do something for Henderson. During Klopp's tenure at Liverpool, he never purposefully emphasized Henderson's captaincy, but rather focused on assigning him tasks on the field. Under Klopp's tactical arrangement, Henderson became the pillar of Liverpool's right flank. He stood behind Salah and Arnold, tackling the gritty defensive tasks himself, leaving scoring opportunities for his teammates. In the eyes of his Liverpool teammates, the unimpressed Henderson had long been the most reliable captain on the pitch. Even Klopp himself gave him high praise after Henderson showed his prowess. The biggest problem in football over the past 500 years was who could take over Gerrard's captain's armband. As far as I am concerned, Henderson has been doing a great job. One day, I want to write a 500-page book about him. Klopp humorously voiced his approval of Henderson, allowing him to stop obsessing over whether he deserved Liverpool's captaincy and instead focus on his responsibilities as a player. However, even with Henderson back to his best form, the mentor-apprentice pair still harbored some regrets. In the 17-18 season, Liverpool returned to the Champions League after a decade, but they fell short of the title against a formidable Real Madrid. Klopp, known as the people's choice, could not dodge the media's criticism for conceding too many goals. With an all-out offensive approach, the barrage of criticism triggered doubts about Klopp and made Henderson realize it was time to stand up and bear the brunt of the pressure for Klopp, who stood sidelined on the field. A year later, a revitalized Liverpool made it to the semi-finals along with Barcelona. However, in the first leg away at Camp Nou, Liverpool were up against an on-fire Messi and returned home with a 0-3 defeat. After the match, Klopp commented frankly during the interview.
Messi, but it shows his skills that he's even there, ball crossbar, and he's...
But Liverpool did not give up. In the second leg at Anfield, Henderson led a strong counterattack, but the Reds' captain was fouled by the opposition, causing his knee injury to worsen. At the end of the first half, when everyone thought Henderson would leave the pitch in disappointment, the little-known genius from Sunderland, now Liverpool's captain, yelled at the team doctor, "Give me everything that can numb the pain." His eyes were fierce. There was no hesitation. From being on the verge of being discarded by a top club, he transformed into the best successor to Gerrard as captain. He knew a leader couldn't fall. Back on the pitch, Henderson took on the role of a warrior. He led the offense and was the first to dive into defense. At this moment, Klopp's heavy metal football philosophy was given new life through Henderson's demonstration, a unique iron-willed spirit belonging to the Liverpool captain. When the game ended and Liverpool finally defeated Barcelona with an aggregate score of 4-3, advancing to the Champions League finals, people knew that the era belonging to Liverpool was quietly progressing. Henderson and Klopp, this pair of master and apprentice, were becoming a new legendary chapter in the history of the Reds. However, everyone gets old. When 33-year-old Henderson could only sit on the bench and watch Liverpool players running on the pitch, he no longer obsessed about regaining Klopp's trust through hard work. He simply touched the liverbird on the player's tunnel one last time, then packed his bags and set off for Saudi Arabia, thousands of miles away from Liverpool, to start a new chapter with Gerrard. During his departure, Henderson was not sad. Klopp had taught him the most significant truth about football. All the responsibility and love might become the chains holding you down, but they don't need to be this heavy. Stay pure, always maintain your passion for football, and that closed valley will eventually open to you.